From 12 News, this is Newsmakers.
Another extraordinary week in American politics. Former President Donald Trump narrowly survived an assassination attempt leading to his triumphant rival at the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee. Now Trump has named his pick for vice president, 39-year-old Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, a convert to the Trump agenda. How has the past decade changed the Republican Party, and what does it mean locally? This week on Newsmakers, we'll ask two veterans of the Rhode Island GOP, State Representative Brian Newberry and former Republican National Committeeman Steven Frias. Welcome to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White alongside 12 News Politics editor Ted Nesi, and we welcome our guests, State Representative Brian Newberry, Republican from North Smithfield, and Steve Frias, former State Republican National Committeeman. Gentlemen, welcome back to the program. It's been a while. It's good to have you. So, look, the Republican Party has gone through a significant change in the last 8 years. How do each of you broadly think about this evolution? Rep, I'll start with you.
You know, it's more than 8 years. Trump was sort of the culmination, I think, the symbol of this. I grew up not poor. I didn't grow up like J.D. Vance in Appalachia, but I didn't grow up in a wealthy family. My grandmother didn't finish high school. Her parents were immigrants from Ireland. She worked in the phone company. Only person in her family had a job during the Depression. I won't belabor the point, but I'm from a classic Democratic, traditional Irish political family. And I was very lucky, though, to go to a private high school, a very expensive one that happened to be 5 minutes from where I grew up. And I met a lot of people, this is 30 years ago, who were the typical George Bush Sr. country club Republicans. And I, as a child, as a student, as a teenager, I really resented a lot of that. I couldn't stand it. I found it snobbish and all that. That's changed a lot. Those are the people that weren't at the convention. You know what I mean? You would never see a George Bush Sr. at that convention. Meanwhile, I remember 8 years ago when I was my last year as minority leader, right after the AFL-CIO convention, I think it was in February of 2016 when Trump first ran, two of the top labor leaders in the state and the private sector came to meet with me and the other leading Republicans in the House and our legal counsel right after that convention because they sensed the wind changing. And we saw the Teamsters was there. The party has changed, but so has the Democratic Party. And a lot of those people, a lot of those attitudes that I didn't like in the Republican Party have, in my view, migrated to the Democratic Party. It's really fascinating. I mean, I could go on for hours, but I know you got to break up the show and ask other questions. But I'm happy to come back to that point.
No, it's good insight. Steve?
Basically, I think there's been positives and negatives. The Reagan era is over. It ended about 2008, and we are now in a populist era. And the Republican Party has, as Brian just said, changed. Demographically, it's changed. Its focus has changed. We used to be a party basically about strong foreign policy and being involved in overseas more economic conservatism. And that's somewhat changed now because the demographics of the party has changed with a focus on immigration, so it's more blue collar. I came from a blue collar household myself. I was a Reagan Democrat. So I've seen the change, but there are positives and negatives with those changes because although you don't have, we are now having certain, I would call like tendencies in the party towards conspiracies and stuff like that, which is not a positive. But that's the way politics changes.
Let's be brass tacks for a minute and just get this out of the way. You two have taken somewhat different tacks around how to now, because every Republican's faced questions during the Trump era. Am I going to find my way through a shift in my own party, or are there things I just fundamentally disagree with? Steve, I'll start with you. You decided to step down as Republican National Committeeman recently because you felt you could not endorse Trump to return. Just briefly, we don't need to belabor it, but why was that the right decision for you?
All right, so I'm a small government conservative, okay? So I believe in limited government, and so I believe in the Constitution and the rule of law. So the election in 2020, I don't believe was stolen, period. I don't want to pardon the people who committed violent acts on January 6th. I don't think Mike Pence could throw out electoral college votes. I don't believe that the legal system is rigged against conservatives. So these are, I think, pretty fundamental things if you're a small government conservative. And although I agree with a lot of Trump's policies, I believe in restricting immigration. I believe in lower taxes. I believe in originalists on the Supreme Court. But those are pretty fundamental for me. And so rather than compromise who I am and what I believe, you got to be true to yourself. If you're not true to yourself, you can't be true to others. I decided it's better to have somebody else who really believes these things leave the party, and I'll just be more of a rank and file guy.
Do you still consider yourself a Republican?
I still am registered a Republican. I still vote Republican. It's just I'm not going to be supporting him because, and I'm not supporting Biden, by the way, all right, because he's terrible, all right? So it's not a campaign.
You might not have to worry about it.
I don't have to worry about that probably in about a week. But my point is, I just fundamentally disagree with those things, and I think that those are potentially very bad for the country if we go down that road, and so I just don't want to be supporting that.
I know there are things you've disagreed with that Trump has said and done, and that are certainly different from, if in my years covering you, how you, Rep. Newberry, have handled yourself in public life. How have you thought about navigating the difficult parts of the Trump era?
Well, first, I agree with like 99.9% what Steve just said, okay? But I come to a slightly different conclusion. And since I'm not a fan of Trump personally at all, I like his policies, most of them. I'm not a personal. I'm very open about that. I supported Ron DeSantis. I even voted for Ron DeSantis in the primary in Rhode Island, even after he pulled out of the thing. And I wish he were the nominee. I think he'd be up by 50 points. But there's 2028 for that, right? Here's the thing. I'm also a legislator, and I've been in politics, not that Steve hasn't, but I've been in elective office for a long time. And we do live in a two-party system. You can say that's good, bad, whatever. Occasionally an independent breaks through at a local level. I mean, John Breen, my colleague from North Smithfield, Woonsocket's an independent, but that's a rare example. In politics, if you want to achieve anything, you have to pick a team. And you see this in the legislature all the time. You know, the Democrats will tell you in the legislature, well, we'll back the speaker. Now, privately they fight, but in the end, they have to pick a team. I'm on the Republican team, mainly because I don't like the Democratic team. Honestly, I've always told my kids, I said, Republicans are often wrong, Democrats are never right. It's a joke, people, but I really believe that in a lot of ways. And so Trump is the guy that my team has picked. It's not the guy I would have picked to lead the team, but he's the leader of the team at some level. And I'll criticize him, but I'm not going to solely switch teams or go the other way. And I respect what Steve said. He's not switching teams either. He's also with the RNC. It's a little different.
Let's stay here for a second, and then we have to go to a break because you know, you're a Republican through and through, but there are more independent voters out there than there are Republicans or there are Democrats, correct? So there are a lot of people watching right now who aren't on that team, and they're having trouble squaring what Steve said. They don't like Biden. They're probably not going to, who knows. But they're going to have trouble squaring January 6th, the election denialism, all of that, and they're not on the team. What do you say to them?
Well, a couple things. You know, you mentioned, I agree with you. I am not a conspiracy theorist. It's one of my pet peeves. We just saw a poll, I think it was yesterday, that 1/3 of polled Democrats believe Trump staged the assassination attempt. There's a lot of crazy stuff on the Democratic side, too. There's a lot of crazy people in the world on both sides and all across the spectrum. Here's the thing, though. When you vote for president, you're not just voting for the president. Biden's been making this argument, too, by the way, because we know he's, I'm not a doctor, but we know he's not in good shape. And the Biden people are making the argument, well, he's got a team. They're right, though. You're not just voting for Trump or Biden or whomever the Democrats throw up next week. You're voting for a whole bureaucracy and administrative appointments and judges below that. That's what I'm supporting. I may not like the guy at the top very much, but I certainly don't want the other team to take over and take over the federal government and run it the way they've been running for the last 4 years, which I think has been a complete disaster for the country. That's how we square that.
Good, Steve.
Just on when you talk about the top of the team, conspiracy theory stuff. Democrats have conspiracy theories, but their leaders tend not to, at the top of the ticket, espouse them and promote them. Because if you espouse and promote them at the top, they spread further and faster with more deadly consequences potentially. Okay? Second, at the top of the ticket problem, remember when you're talking the chief executive is the most powerful position in our country. He may be the head of the team, but having that much power, and you wonder, he gets away with this, he gets away with that, what else is he going to try to get away with? That's the pause for me that I said, I don't feel comfortable with this where it's at right now. I'm just going to take a step back. You're on the teams. I agree. I'm going to sit on the bench. You guys go at it. I'm going to sit on the bench, and you guys have fun because I don't feel comfortable with this.
All right.
That's what it is.
We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about what all of this means locally. Stay with us. You're watching Newsmakers. News is your local election headquarters, and welcome back to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White alongside Ted Nesi, our 12 News politics editor. This week, our guests are State Representative Brian Newberry, Republican from North Smithfield, and Steve Frias. He's the former State Republican National Committeeman.
One last question on how the party shifted before we talk locally, which is I was in high school for 9/11. I was in college for the Iraq War, and it is so striking to me that no mention of George W. Bush last night. Obviously, he wasn't at the convention. We know Trump doesn't even, I think, really like George W. Bush, and of course beat Jeb. Steve, I mean, that's a remarkable change in the party compared to how strong the support was for Bush in the 2000s. Do you think that is just a feeling among the party rank and file that the way it ended between the war and the economic crisis, it actually wasn't good? Or do you think it's because the people in the party have shifted due to Trump is part of why the Bush era is is just so distant now from what the Republicans are today.
It is pretty remarkable that the Bush dynasty is over. I mean, this was a dominant force in the Republican Party. I think it was the way it ended in the last 4 years, of 2004 to 2008. And what you're talking about, the economic recession, the Great Recession, you talk about the Iraq War, those are factors, but the main reason was that George W. Bush was constantly pushing the comprehensive immigration reform concept, the pathway to citizenship for people who are illegally in this country. He was tone deaf, totally deaf to the comments of the base of the Republican Party. You know this from 2005, 2006. And what made Trump who he was today is he found that issue in 2015, lit it on fire, and Bush is in the rearview mirror, and it's just been sailing for Trump since. So it was that around 2005, 2006, 7, when Bush would just not listen to the base. He kept pushing for a pathway for citizenship for illegal aliens.
That's a really good point.
All right, I want to talk about what we talked about in the first block means locally, and we'll go to the elected official at the table, representative. You know, a snapshot in time, things are looking pretty good for Trump's reelection chances right now. November is months away. A lot can happen. I'm saying that, but is it necessarily good for local Republicans that are in Rhode Island and I would argue in Massachusetts? I mean, I don't think anyone expects Trump to win Rhode Island, but I think Trump will do very well in Rhode Island. He did actually, last time. State Senator Jessica De La Cruz, who we met up with down in Milwaukee, wondered if this was going to be like in 1984 when Reagan took.
Yeah, you got to go back a little bit.
It's optimistic.
Okay. Well, anyway.
no, but honestly, I would say one of the things. This is a long topic, and we have a short amount of time. But the truth is, I first ran 11 elections ago, 2004. And I look back sometimes, when I got elected, I represent part of Boroughville. When I got elected, I was the only elected Republican in Boroughville at all. Council, school, nobody in state legislature but me. Now, this year, the Democrats couldn't even field a candidate for any of the town offices, and they fielded one not real candidate for another office. That's it. Meanwhile, towns like East Greenwich, Barrington, places that were Republican strongholds when I first got involved, have not only gone all Democrat, they've gone progressive liberal Democrat, which I think is more a function of the Democrats in those towns got the majority, but they didn't change their views from being progressive liberals. But it goes back to what I was saying earlier. The wealthy, the well-to-do are moving en masse to the Democratic Party. You see it in donations, et cetera. The working class is switching to the Republican Party. It goes back to what Steve was saying about immigration. Unchecked illegal immigration undercuts wages. This is something, by the way, that Bernie Sanders said a long time ago. It's something that a lot of economists have said. I've often joked about how many, not joked, but Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump, a lot of people back in 2016 liked them both, which I find a little bit incomprehensible to you listening closely. They both were identifying the same problems. Their solutions were very different. I don't support Bernie Sanders at all, but not because he's wrong about saying these are the problems in our country. It's just I think what he would do would make them worse.
Both very much outsiders, and speaking from that point of view.
But you see the point, though.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think, I wonder sometimes, Steve, if there's been almost a trade where Republicans have strengthened in various places. We see it here, as you said, in some of the towns that have finally swung that way. You see states that are now strongly Republican, where maybe Democrats were a little competitive in the past. But it feels like in Rhode Island and Massachusetts, the trade has been, it's become effectively impossible for a Republican to win a statewide or federal race. We saw Alan Fung come so close, and yet he couldn't get over the line in 22. Yeah. Charlie Baker is gone, and frankly, I'm not sure he could have gotten renominated if he had tried to run in 2022. I mean, is that kind of the trade at this point for a Trump Republican Party, that it just can't play statewide anymore in bluer states like this?
I think it is. I mean, the trading has been going on for about a generation. We won the South, we lost New England. That's the big picture. And then in the Trump era, it's been magnified. Basically now, 20 years ago, Don Kucheri could win governorship with 55% of the vote, and Jack Reed could win U.S. Senate race with 78% of the vote. 1/3 of the people were basically splitting their tickets. Now, it's maybe 8%. So because the Republican base in this state who are voting for Trump are about 40%, that means at most, even if you get every swing voter to go for you, every split ticket, you're probably going to fall short of a majority. Or it's going to be really difficult. And because Trump makes it more polarizing, like we're having this discussion about Trump right now, people view me based on that instead of everything else I believe in. Oh, he's a Trump guy, you suck. Or you're not Trump enough, you suck. So it becomes impossible to talk about yourself and what you want to do because of this thing at the national level. So I think for the time being, for Republicans, we have to focus on the districts where Trump is going to do well or come within a few points of a majority in that district, rep districts, Senate districts, and that gets you about almost 1/3.
It's that sort of
cut-to-it analysis that we appreciate here on Newsmakers. Rep, we have less than a minute left, and I want to ask a specific question. Ian Donis at the Public's Radio reported that nearly half of the 113 seats at the General Assembly are going uncontested, which I read to be like Republicans really have not put up enough people to run. Is this year a missed opportunity for Rhode Island Republicans?
It's a longer answer than a minute. We were talking about this outside before the show. Here's the thing. Do you go for quality or quantity? We'd love to do both. We don't have the resources to do both. I think we're going to gain seats in the legislature, and I mean that, not a ton of seats, but I think we're going to gain seats. I wish we could gain more, but a lot of these seats are unwinnable right now for some of the reasons Steve said. So I think we'll do okay. We'll do well by our standards, put it that way.
We'll win some seats where Trump's going to do well in.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
And we'll hold the seats that are up that are open.
Steve Frias and State Rep Brian Newberry, thanks so much for joining us on the program. When we come back, we're going to dissect a poll that isn't great news for Governor Dan McKee. Stay with us. You're watching Newsmakers. Well, News is your local election headquarters, and welcome back to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White alongside 12 News Politics editor Ted Nesi. Great conversation on the first half of the program. I want to go back to Milwaukee, where the Republican National Convention wrapped up. Throughout the week, 12 News caught up with Republicans from Rhode Island and Massachusetts. Here's a quick look at some of the people we talked to.
I was so proud to be there, to be able to announce our delegates and how many votes we were giving to President Trump. And remind everybody that we're Massachusetts.
I think the seminal moment was when President Trump actually showed up on Monday, which was a surprise to most of the delegates. And I think the place just erupted. People were happy to see him, that he was healthy.
It's been electrifying. I haven't been around this many Republicans ever. If Ronald Reagan was successful in winning over Rhode Island in 1984, there is hope for Rhode Island. So I would tell Rhode Islanders, don't give up. We need balance at the State House. So this November, from the top of the ballot all the way down, give Republicans a chance.
So, Ted, it's kind of interesting to me, and you brought it up actually on the first half of the program. You know, Republicans always had a tough time with Trump.
Around here, at least.
I'm sorry, that's what I mean, in Rhode Island. So, but through the local lens, through the Rhode Island lens, and in Massachusetts, since we had Hodgson on there, what did you come away with from the RNC in terms of what it meant to local
I was struck as we listened. We interviewed a lot of local Republicans over the course of the week, our team out in Milwaukee. And, I think the assassination attempt in particular, I feel like almost liberated a lot of local Republicans who'd always felt they needed to kind of straddle the fence, always say, like, I hate his tweets, but I like his policies, that kind of comment, just to say they were just for Trump. They were just glad to support him. They liked his policies, et cetera. So it feels like this also might be a moment where it does feel like Republicans are more unified than they've been before in the Trump era. At the same time, we see Democrats as disunited as any party in a generation or two.
So, in other words, local Republicans feel more free to embrace.
To some extent. You even heard in the first half, they're still not ready to say, Brian Newberry's still saying he doesn't love Trump, he voted for DeSantis. But I think they've gotten a little more comfortable with it.
So, we're taping on a Friday morning. Boy, is it. It's an understatement to say things are fluid right now. So when folks are watching this at home, a lot could have changed. But I want to just kind of pivot to President Joe Biden and the will he, won't he kind of question. You made national news a couple of weeks ago when you interviewed Senator Whitehouse, and he had cold feet, I guess is the best way to summarize it. And we caught up with him again this week, and not much has changed. Take a listen.
I think that's a project that is still being considered between House leadership, Democratic leadership, and the president and his team, and I don't think there's an answer for it yet. I'm not saying one thing or another, despite your very clever and well-handled efforts to try to get me to say that.
All right, translate.
Senator Whitehouse is not comfortable with Joe Biden as the Democratic nominee.
Right.
He just doesn't want to say that on the record explicitly because it's so explosive. But, I've covered Joe Whitehouse a long time, so have you. It's not usually hard to get him to talk, including at length.
Right.
So him being this clipped tells us something. And I think, there are Democrats, responding to reporters, including me, mad that we're suggesting we might be hyping this up, creating this problem for Joe Biden. No, this is flowing down from comments like you just saw from Sheldon Whitehouse, from Nancy Pelosi and others who could stamp this out by saying, we dispute it all, Joe Biden's great, let's run with him. They don't feel that way, and that's why the president has a real problem. All
right, we'll see. A lot could change in the next few days. Let's talk about, Alex, let's bring up the UNH poll if we could. UNH polled 598 registered voters in Rhode Island and found only 29% approve of Governor Dan McKee's job performance, 65% disapprove, and 6% couldn't fall either way. Look, I went through the crosstabs on this as you and I like to do, so that's when you break down the demographics of a poll. And to me, and I want to hear your take as a politics editor, the big red flag to me is just how poorly he did with independents in this poll.
Yeah, I think, frankly, when you're at 29% approval, you're not doing well with anybody. Yeah. You know, he's in the 40s with Democrats. That's a red flag number, as our Joe Fleming pointed out to me when I asked him about the poll, as Dan McKee's looking to run in 2026. Very weak with independents. And, you know, the problem is it's across the board when you get down that low. It reminds you, know, Lincoln Chafee reached a point in his governorship where he had just, because it's not just the approve number. Look at that disapprove number, 65%.
Right.
That's not people who haven't made up their mind or just don't have an opinion. They've gone into the disapprove. So it will take a lot of work for McKee and his team to move those numbers. It is definitely not impossible. We've seen people have polling recoveries. He's got 2 years. But that is a tough place to be in right now when you're 2 years out from the election.
All right, let's do another question from the UNH poll here. And they asked what the Rhode Islanders, what the biggest concern that they're facing here. And there was a whole list of things. So let's just do the top 4 here. Number 1, housing. Shouldn't surprise anyone. We're in a housing crisis here. Infrastructure was the second one, jobs and economy. And then 4th was corrupt/incompetent government. 11% of those polled said that was their top concern. And what stood out to me here was the infrastructure one. And then I think you combine that sort of corrupt, incompetent government, and that screams Washington Bridge.
Undoubtedly. I talked to A&D Smith at UNH, who was the survey director, on the phone yesterday, and he said, and you'd said it already to me, Tim, at that point, and he confirmed it. He said, we think that infrastructure number is the Washington Bridge crisis. He said, we're not seeing that in other states when we do the top issues. Infrastructure is not hitting that high. So he thinks that's people hearing about the bridge all the time. And then, of course, people have broader concerns about infrastructure in Rhode Island, and that's elevating that as an issue locally. Was interesting. There were differences among the different groups. It was the economy for independents. It was housing, first and foremost, for Democrats. I believe it was immigration for Republicans in the poll. So it's also, you know, there isn't a united agreement in Rhode Island right now about what the key issue is. It depends who you're talking to.
Unfortunately, we are out of time. Ted did a great write-up breaking down the UNH poll. You can catch that on the WPRI.com page. Hit Target 12 and click on his name, and you can find that article there. And if you missed any of it, you can also watch Newsmakers on WPRI.com. I'm Tim White. We'll see you next week.